Hello, hi, everybody. Welcome back. Wow, I just had a very interesting experience. I wanted to go into this today talking about something goofy and wild and wacky, just to show that I could be, but you know what? It looks like life didn't want me to go that way. Not this time. I just had a rather eye opening experience with my family, most of them at least, uh, about a lot of things to do with perception. Whew! Man, that was unexpected. I discovered that uh, they did not think nearly how I thought they did at all. At all. No, they didn't understand what I thought they understood. And that is good, I guess. I mean, that's a good thing that I learned it. It wasn't necessarily a good thing before because I was going into conversations with them assuming that this is how they thought because that's what I've gathered before, but guess not. Uh, anyway, the talk was primarily, towards the end at least, was primarily about conversations and started, not to get too personal. This is probably going to be a rather personal, quote unquote, episode if you want that disclaimer. But this just happened all of a sudden. This morning, my dad decided to make my mom, well, sort of, not really. My dad decided to make breakfast for me and my brother. And that went well. But in a circumstance of timing, he said, breakfast is ready as soon as my mom walked up the stairs. And since she didn't have any information, she assumed that breakfast is ready. She assumed that was for her. And so she asked who the eggs in the pan were for. And my dad responded with some cryptic message saying, like, whatever, I don't know, to try and keep it a surprise. And that didn't bode well. So, long story short, a lot went on, and the last, what time is it now? And the last 12 hours, just about, have been spent in the midst of a conflict between my parents involving literally eggs. Not to say that they are unintelligent people, but this was quite a stupid argument to have. However, it developed into something far greater than eggs, even though eggs are pretty high on the list of things that are good. Now, what happened just now, started at about 7 o'clock, just over 45 minutes ago, that that developed into a talk about perceptions and how we live in different worlds. We all live on the same planet, right, Earth, but we live in different worlds. All of us together live in different perceptions of how we go about things. And that was rather eye-opening because I knew they lived in their own worlds. I knew that they've made it quite clear. But I didn't know the extent to which those worlds were colliding. And not in all of the most positive ways. See, what happened is, my dad lives in something he calls Guy World, in where words don't have emotions. They're just objective. All they are words. And where, you don't have to say anything or whatever. I don't know. I don't know. And my mom lives in something that he calls Girl World, which obviously is not his. And he can't even begin to explain it, but I can say that it is more emotionally based, and less conversation needs to be had in order to get the point across. Perceptively, at least. And then when those two worlds come in contact with each other, it is a hellstorm. And I have discovered that through trial by fire. Now, what just happened in that conversation that I've been building up this entire time was my dad trying to understand why my mom thinks the way she does. And me and my brother, essentially, were the translators, were the moderators for that understanding. I have been, oh my gosh, this is going to sound really self-deprecating, but I've been sort of raised in an environment where my opinion doesn't matter all the time. It rarely does, actually, especially within conflicts between my parents, because I'm denied because of my lack of experience and my inability to understand anything going on in their lives. But today we learned that I have a bit more input than they might have thought before. What happened was, since I live in both of their worlds forcibly more than anything, I live in both of their worlds because I have been raised by both of them in the same house for quite a while. But they have been living in their own perceptions for significantly longer. And that is a problem, because that saying, you can't teach an old dog new tricks, really is a good adage. See, now my dad has been trying to understand, or he's been saying he's been trying to understand what is going on with the other side more frequently. He's saying he's been trying to understand it, and he thinks he's been doing a pretty good job. Others would disagree, but you know what? We'll let him think what he thinks. And today, I explained to him that emotional side of things, because I live in more of an emotional world. I'm much more of an emotionally based person, but more so than that, which I feel like contributes to how I was able to say things to him. I live in a world where words are very, very important, where words, any word, can be perceived in 25 different ways. And then when you string them together, when you string words together, you can string them together in hundreds of thousands of different ways. And each one of those ways can be perceived differently, because I know that the emotions behind them are very valuable. They are very important to the person reading. He does not see that side, or he did not, at least. I hope in the future past this, he begins to realize that words can be attached with emotions. I explained to him that the principle of connotation and how words can have emotions behind them, where he didn't see this before. He just thought that words were words, and no matter how you phrased it, it would always mean the same thing, and that nothing was ever implied unless the exact words were stated. So instead of saying, he would think that please don't and no, don't do that were entirely different things. Entirely different. And I can't understand that way of thinking, but I don't have to. I explained to him how my mom lives in a more emotional world where words, even though you explain something differently, it has the same base meaning, and how you keep going to the same point over and over and over again with different words. And she gets frustrated because she sees that you're just saying the same thing over and over and over again with different words, and you're going back to the same point time and time again. That's why she gets frustrated, because she keeps giving the same answer, but you're asking the question with different words. And she still gives the same answer, but you don't understand it, and she gets frustrated with it. He doesn't understand why she gets frustrated with it, because he thinks he's asking entirely different questions. I feel like I'm being redundant, but I apologize. I'm very worked up right now. Through this entire conversation, I finally kind of got a voice in things, which felt really nice. But with that voice, I was able to say things that I've never said before. And it was a very important family discussion, which I can appreciate. I can very much appreciate, because hopefully my home life will be a little less chaotic and a little less turbulent because of this. Now, in this meeting of worlds, we've discovered that no matter how different two people are, there's always a place, some sort of place that they can meet, but it has to be mutual. It cannot be exclusive to one side. If one person keeps walking in their direction and the person behind them keeps chasing them, they'll have to catch up or they'll never meet. And eventually, after enough running, you get tired and you stop running, and the other guy just gets further and further ahead. I hope that analogy made sense. But that was pretty much the case with my parents. One trying to understand the other, being unable, giving up for a little bit, and then trying it all over again, and thus the cycle repeated. Now, through all of my gibberish and insanity talk about how perceptions can be extremely important and how everyone's perception is valid. I hope you can take this and apply it to other people and look at things in a different way. Just because you think a certain way does not mean that everyone has to think like you. That is an extremely important lesson to take away. I don't want to continue this for too long. I feel like I could, but it's been just over 10 minutes. And I feel like that's a good place to end the episode today. Thank you for listening to my rant and rambles.